Like, what's this girl, Meghan Markle? Ah, seemed like a nice lady. Just complaining. I was like, didn't she hit the light skin lottery? Hit the fucking light skin lottery and still going on complaining.
Oh my gosh, I work so hard and
Trying to be a victim.
Going on to the news, my God, it's so crazy out there. What's going on with Meghan Markle? She thinks that everybody is just stupid. Like we can't see that she is manipulating his dumb husband. I really feel sorry for the family. Maybe everybody's fixated on how good looking this guy.
Racist is so racist. Some of that he went through was not racism. It was just some in-law. Sometimes it's just some in-law. Cause she's complaining. I'm like, what the she talking about? Oprah, I didn't know. I had no idea how racist they were. It's the royal family. You didn't Google these motherfuckers? What the fuck is she talking about? She didn't know.
When comedians, late-night hosts, and even cartoons all start roasting the same person, you know something has gone terribly wrong. Meghan Markle once dreamed of being America's princess, but instead, she's become Hollywood's favorite punchline. From Chris Rock's savage Netflix takedown to South Park dedicating an entire episode to mocking her so-called privacy tour, Meghan's story has spiraled into non-stop comedy fuel. But the real twist, the mockery isn't just about jokes. It's exposing something much darker. The contradictions, the hypocrisy, and the desperate chase for fame that Meghan and Harry can't seem to escape. And the deeper you look, the worse it gets. When Chris Rock stepped onto that Netflix stage, Meghan Markle probably should have braced herself for impact, because what came next wasn't just comedy, it was a demolition. Rock didn't tiptoe around the royal drama. He cut straight through Meghan's victim narrative like it was the setup to his easiest joke of the night. Remember Meghan's big claim on Oprah? That she had no idea what she was getting into. That she never even Googled the royal family. Rock turned that into pure comedy fuel. He looked at the audience with disbelief, like he couldn't believe anyone could say that with a straight face. Then came the punchline. You didn't Google the royals? They're the original racists. The crowd exploded. It wasn't just a laugh, it was a turning point. For years, Meghan had leaned on that image of being blindsided by royal life. But in a single joke, Rock made it sound ridiculous, almost insulting to people's intelligence. And suddenly, a lot of viewers started wondering if maybe Meghan wasn't a victim. Maybe she was just playing a part. And here's where I want to ask you, do you think Chris Rock went too far? Or was he just saying what most people were already thinking? Because the reaction that night made it clear, this wasn't just a comedy special, it was a public reckoning. But as sharp as Rock's roast was, it was only the beginning. The floodgates had opened, and once other comedians smelled blood in the water, Meghan and Harry became the biggest punchline in the world. Chris Rock may have set the tone, but once the first shot was fired, other comedians lined up to take aim. And what they said only made things worse for Meghan and Harry. Andrew Schultz didn't waste time with clever setups. He just said what millions of Americans had already been whispering. We don't care about you. We don't care about the royal family. The last time we cared was 1775. The crowd roared, not because it was polished or delicate, but because it was brutally honest. For Meghan, who had worked so hard to center herself in America's spotlight, that dismissal was devastating. Then came Nikki Glaser, who took a different angle. Instead of brushing Meghan off, she painted a what-if scenario. What if Meghan hadn't married Harry? According to Glaser, Meghan wouldn't be hosting lifestyle shows or sitting with Oprah. She'd be a contestant on The Bachelor, or maybe just another barista in Sherman Oaks. The audience laughed, but the undertone was clear. Meghan's fame didn't come from her talent. It came from Harry, and without him, she was nobody. These jokes weren't just mean-spirited digs. They were rewiring the way audiences thought about Meghan. Every punchline stripped away a piece of her carefully built image, leaving behind someone who looked less like a princess and more like a fame chaser. And the more comedians piled on, the harder it became for her to hold on to the narrative she'd been selling. But that wasn't the end of it, because while the stand-up world was roasting her live on stage, an even more vicious form of satire was getting ready to take its shot. And trust me, it was about to get ugly. Because if you thought the comedians were harsh, wait until you see what the cartoons did next. If the comedians were bad, the cartoons were brutal. Because unlike stand-up, where a joke comes and goes, animated satire has the power to exaggerate every flaw, every contradiction, and replay it again and again. Take The Prince, for example. The entire series treated Harry and Meghan as if their post-royal life was nothing more than a money chase. Meghan was portrayed as desperate for the spotlight, clinging to any shred of attention, while Harry came off as clueless and easily led. It was a caricature, yes, but the scary part was how many viewers felt like it wasn't that far from the truth. Then came Spitting Image. The British puppet show didn't hold back at all. Harry was painted as lazy, pampered, and hopelessly out of touch, a man who claimed to want independence while still cashing in on royal connections. Meghan, on the other hand, was cast as shamelessly ambitious, hungry for fame, and determined to stay relevant no matter the cost. The puppets were over the top, but the satire hit a nerve, because it played directly into the criticisms people were already whispering. And here's the thing, once you're turned into a cartoon, you're no longer just a person. You're a symbol, a walking meme. That's why these portrayals were so damaging. They made Meghan and Harry larger than life, but in the worst possible way. Now I want to ask you, do you think these cartoons went too far? Or were they just saying out loud what everyone else was already thinking? Because either way, this was just the warm-up. The real knockout was still to come, and it arrived in the form of one of the most savage comedy shows on the planet. Then came the blow that Meghan and Harry could never ignore. South Park. Known for taking no prisoners, the show dedicated an entire episode to the couple, and it wasn't subtle. Titled The Worldwide Privacy Tour, it tore apart the biggest contradiction Meghan had been selling, demanding privacy while doing the exact opposite in the loudest way possible. The episode mocked Meghan as a spotlight-chasing princess who claimed she wanted a normal life, all while parading across talk shows, magazines, and social media. Harry, meanwhile, was drawn as the eternal victim, a man born into privilege but determined to convince the world he was suffering. Together, they looked less like a couple escaping the royal machine and more like professional complainers cashing in on their grievances. What made it sting wasn't just the humor, it was the accuracy. South Park boiled down everything critics had been saying for years into a single scathing half hour. And unlike a stand-up set, this wasn't a moment that faded with the crowd's laughter. It was an episode fans could replay, dissect, and meme forever. For Meghan, being mocked by one of the most influential satire shows in history was a public humiliation on a global scale. Because once South Park drags you, that reputation sticks. And yet, the mockery didn't stop there. In fact, it only fueled the fire for even more comedy giants to join in. And what came next turned the ridicule into a full-blown avalanche. If South Park landed the knockout, Family Guy made sure the beating didn't stop. Their episode went straight for the jugular, mocking Meghan and Harry's multi-million-dollar Netflix deals as little more than cash grabs. One gag had Harry casually pocketing millions for doing nothing, while another showed the couple shilling sponsored Instagram posts like influencers desperate to stay relevant. It was savage, but it also tapped into what critics had been saying all along, that their royal exit wasn't about freedom, it was about money. And then there was Saturday Night Live. The legendary sketch show took a different approach, turning the rivalry between Harry and William into comedy gold. They didn't just poke fun at the brothers' strained relationship, they dragged Meghan right into it. In one sketch, William mocked Meghan's acting career on Suits, suggesting the show was so boring it could be sold as a sleep aid. It wasn't just a jab at her past, it was a reminder that Meghan's Hollywood resume wasn't exactly as glamorous as she wanted the world to believe. These moments weren't just jokes, they chipped away at the Sussexes' carefully curated image. Comedy was no longer treating them like victims, it was treating them like punchlines, and the more these sketches aired, the harder it became for Meghan and Harry to escape the ridicule. But that wasn't all, because while television was busy dragging them, the internet was about to take things to a whole new level, and it wasn't pretty. If the comedians and TV shows were brutal, the internet was merciless, because while a Netflix special or a late-night sketch comes and goes, online parodies live forever, replayed, remixed, and shared until they become impossible to escape. It started with Meghan's new cooking show, where one awkward moment went viral in seconds. During a friendly chat with Mindy Kaling, Meghan cut in sharply to correct her for saying Meghan Markle, insisting she should now be called Meghan Duchess of Sussex. It was meant to be a dignified correction, but online creators flipped it into pure comedy gold. Edits and memes spread like wildfire, turning her demand into a running joke. Suddenly, her polished lifestyle brand looked more like a desperate cry for attention. Then came the parodies of the show itself. TikTok creators began mocking the over-the-top presentation, boiling water as if it were a groundbreaking recipe, arranging flowers like it was a world-changing ritual. The criticism was clear. Meghan's show looked like all style, no substance, and the internet ran with it, tearing apart her nothing into something vibe until it became a comedy trend of its own. But it didn't stop at the cooking show. Creators started digging into Meghan's past too. Clips mocking her dramatic family fallout, jokes about her estranged father, even spoofs of her and Harry's decision to leave the UK. All of it became meme fuel. Serious life events she once framed as tragedies were being flipped into jokes on endless repeat. By this point, it wasn't just comedians, shows, or cartoons laughing at Meghan. It was everyone. And that kind of viral mockery is impossible to contain. Because once the internet turns you into a meme, there's no turning back. But believe it or not, even that wasn't the end. Because after the online storm came the final stage of humiliation, a moment that proved Meghan's fairy tale wasn't just slipping away. It had already been rewritten as a global punchline. Not long ago, Meghan Markle was seen as a woman who had broken barriers, married into the most famous family in the world, and walked away on her own terms. She was supposed to be the star of a modern royal fairy tale. But the way things played out, her story took a very different turn. Now, instead of inspiring admiration, she inspires mockery. From Chris Rock's savage comedy special to South Park's relentless parody, from late-night jabs to viral TikToks, Meghan and Harry have gone from being figures of sympathy to the centerpiece of a global roast. The very platform they built for themselves, interviews, podcasts, documentaries, lifestyle shows, has turned into the same material comedians and creators use to tear them down. And that's the irony. The harder Meghan and Harry worked to control their narrative, the more out of control it became. By trying to present themselves as relatable victims, they handed the world endless contradictions to laugh at. The royal fairy tale they once sold now looks less like a love story and more like a long-running sitcom, with them as the punchline. So the question isn't whether the ridicule will stop, it's whether Meghan and Harry can ever escape it. Because once the world decides your brand is comedy, no amount of glossy interviews or carefully staged cooking shows can change that. And if the past few years have shown us anything, it's this: the joke isn't ending anytime soon. But then again, maybe that's the real tragedy. What was supposed to be their happily ever after has instead become the internet's favorite never-ending laugh track. And for Meghan Markle, that might be the hardest role she's ever had to play.